Welcome to our Devos, where we are talking about dealing with disappointment. Dealing with what happens when something doesn't go the way that we expect. Dealing with what happens when we find ourselves in a place where we think things are going to go a certain way. We think that things are going to happen the way that we think they would happen, and we find that they don't. Well, one of the ways we have to deal with this is not by saying, oh, it didn't really matter. I didn't really care about that thing. I actually am glad. No, that's just not realistic. And a lot of Christians, unfortunately, that's what they do. And that'll just lead you to be fake. I hate to say it, you're fake. Some people, they come in and they're too churchy. I know that sounds goofy, but you're too churchy. Like somebody asks how you doing. Oh, I'm good. Praise the Lord. Everything's good. The sun is shining. It's bright. It's lovely, blah, blah, blah. And you can't have a normal conversation. But while you're saying those things behind the scenes, like you're beside yourself, you're dealing with discouragement, you're struggling with your faith, you're not knowing where you are, and then a couple months go by and you have a crisis of faith, and people are like, what? This person, they're struggling with believing, they're struggling with understanding God, knowing Him, they're struggling with all this stuff, and in reality, the truth is, it was never real to begin with. And you never really truly were who you were before God, and it was inauthentic. So I want to encourage you, this is about authenticity. Disappointment hurts, okay? Disappointment stinks. It's terrible. And you shouldn't be excited about being disappointed. You should say, this is terrible. I remember when I first started working for the church, the first project that I was ever involved in with the church's real estate. We've done a lot of real estate deals at the church since I've been here, and Pastor Mike, of course, orchestrates all that. But I was in charge of this deal about buying a little piece of property across from where the church now sits. We were looking, Pastor Mike and I didn't know what we were doing. We were trying to figure out where the church was going to go. The pastors were working together trying to figure this out. And this property came available, and no property really ever comes available up here. It's pretty infrequent where the church campus is. So Pastor Mike was like, this just makes sense. We're going to buy this property. It's a little property. We put a sign on it. We could put, maybe some advertising. We were going to do that. Well, I worked on this deal with the owner. I worked on the deal with the realtor. I worked back and forth for months. And this was like my first big thing. I was only at the church for a couple months. And it fell apart. And Pastor Mike, because he'd already been a part of so many real estate deals, even at the church, he was like, this is no big deal. But I was devastated. I felt like a failure. I felt like that I messed up. I didn't do my due diligence. Like I didn't know what was going on. I'd already been buying real estate. This didn't make any sense. And I came to see later that truly, we shouldn't have bought that land. Like there was a reason why we shouldn't have bought it. We ended up buying the land that we now own that the church is on, and that was the land we needed. And now we have a billboard down there that we can advertise. Like we have more than we could ever need when it comes to advertising, visibility. We didn't even know. We were like 7 years or 8 years out from that. But my point is this. When you go through these seasons, this is what you have to keep in mind, because you're going to be disappointed. God hears what you whisper through tears. God hears what you whisper through tears. So instead of me, when the staff would say, how you doing? I'm like, no, this stinks. I hate this. I'm really upset. I'm really angry. I want you to know that God knows what's going on. And when you're praying, just like we saw with Hannah over the weekend, when you go through those seasons, God is still ministering to you. He's still hearing what you're saying. He still is trying to be there for you, and He's present with you, even though you're disappointed, even though you might be hurt. There's this Psalm, Chapter 40, verse 1 says, I waited patiently for the Lord, and He inclined to me and heard my cry. It's not so much that you get what you want or you don't get what you want. It's more about the idea that God is near to you when your disappointment is overwhelming. That God hears you when your pain is louder than your praise. And He can go into that season with you and enable you to understand Him and appreciate Him in a totally different way.